cloud here.
Okay, great. And so you've got your.
I'm going to cloud.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay, so we were talking about automatic speech recognition, and yes, it's science, which is always evolving. And these neural networks are being taught when they're made, when mistakes are made, those audio files are sent to an engine that are then basically instructed. This word you spelled wrong, here's the words around it, and here's what it sounded like, and here's what it needs to be spelled as. So, you know, it's laborious at that point, but it does get better. And I talked earlier about statistical, you know, analysis along with, you know, in grammar being parts of this. Real time or file based is kind of neat. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you know, there's not just you don't just caption live like you do for on the air. There's plenty of times to caption files, and there's a whole lot more file content out there that needs to be captioned than are live. And cloud and on premises are also what ASR can do, either one. And we talked about the accuracy there. A little bit about live versus offline. Obviously, live is live, right? ASR's roughly about 3 to 6 seconds is that delay of it doing that statistical analysis and waiting for other words to come out. And that really varies by sentence. It's kind of fascinating when you watch it, because certain words and sentences roll out really quick because it knows all those words. Other times there may be a couple words that's waiting for the next word to verify or validate. And then it decides. So it's kind of neat watching it think. And that's comparable to humans. And of course, with live, you can make a mistake. There's no going back. That's the same with humans or ASR. Real time is done live or by automation. Real time can be captioned live or on premises. Plenty of most folks who caption for a living do it from their homes. As long as you can give them audio and they can give you back data, there's no reason to be in the venue. We actually do have ourselves some pretty neat customers in the DoD that actually don't want to do that. They like to have people in the room or use an ASR like ours, which is on premise, so they don't have to actually worry about those conversations leaving the room. So, you know, unique kind of application there. But offline is the benefit there is it's faster, for one thing. For example, at least with our technology, about an hour-long event can be captioned in just under about 30 minutes. That's just because it's just easier for the software to play the audio file really at, you know, double speed in its own kind of parlance. And with offline, you can also do batches of files. There are folks like universities that have a lot of content in the cloud that are accessible to, you know, their students or the greater community that don't have captions. So over time, they are adding these videos to a hopper that then batch file these, and then the next day they have caption files that then they can marry back with those videos and have added captions. So there's a lot of that offline stuff being done as well. And of course, the nice thing about offline is you can tweak it, right? If there's an error, if there's a mistake, you can, you know, edit that. And there are plenty of humans that do offline captioning as well. I mean, if you remember, as I mentioned, that's how it all started, was listening to a few words of a tape, pausing it, typing into a chyron and burning those on the screen and going on. In file-based versus offline in the cloud, there's a lot of offline captioning resources out there. And some are skewed more to academia and others. Some have higher quality, some are lower cost. There's all kinds of ways to do file-based with varying results, however. So the old adage, you get what you pay for, of course. You know, we see a lot of captioning done in things like Microsoft, Azure, or Google, but they don't have ways of customizing and training their system from the user. They don't really know what the user knows. So they're neat, but they're not perfect. Well, nothing's perfect. I notice this every day. So a little bit about cloud versus on-premises. Like I said, humans at home, you know, they can get a 3.4 kilohertz voice grade signal, you know, or some kind of audio stream and send it back either through the web or ISDN. But of course, the challenges there, the human can, you know, be distracted. The connection can go down. The dog can run over the cats over the lap and unplug the thing. You know, I mean, yeah, technology and animals. So you know, and humans have bad days. Humans sometimes. I think we all have bad days. Sometimes you see people caption was like, what were they thinking? You know, again, the technology though is that's proven. Humans can caption well. Like I mentioned, the DoD and other kind of private, law firms, large corporations or any size really that want to have meetings across their various constituents across secure conferencing links still need to have one more person in that equation, and that is somebody who's captioning, and they may not like that for trade secret reasons. On premises, when you have a box that's on-prem instead of cloud, obviously it's a simpler architecture. It just works on-prem, no internet, no connection to lose. Typically it's bolted into a rack. Most of them are good at one signal at a time or one file at a time. You can scale up the hardware if you do need to have more. And therefore what happens on that box kind of stays in that box. So this slide here kind of gives you an actual kind of pictorial of a typical captioning environment today, let's say for a local broadcast newscast. And most of y'all being in TV know exactly this. You've got your on-air talent and they're talking, and that goes over the air. And there's a human accessing that signal somewhere, either if they're in the neighborhood, so to speak, to get it over terrestrial, or they're dialed in somehow to get the audio feed. Each of you might have different routes in how you do that, but in any case, then they're typing it and then they're sending it back over some digital link back that gets back to the station. And you may be doing that directly, or maybe going through a captioning service, which then of course adds more of a delay there too. And then it gets coupled back up with the transmission signal and off it goes. So by definition, there are some delaying factors in that, and some pathways that can be broken down. So one nice thing about on premises is it's pretty much a straight line. Literally audio flows through a device that inserts the SDI caption data, and down the air chain it goes. So you got to have some simplicity. You got to like simplicity in that regard there. And yeah, so why caption? Okay, so there's all the nuts and bolts. Why? We've talked about the FCC at first, big time reason. We talked about the lawsuits under the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. But there's benefits too. Your content becomes searchable. Now when you search into things like Google, a lot of you may have noticed that certain times videos come up, and videos with an index point that you can click on, and boom, there's that video starting where that word was. That only works when there's caption data in that video that they then index. Basically caption data is metadata. I like to call it the third rail of content, because you've got audio and you've got video. And I think caption data is really that third essence of content. So that third rail. And also you will, improve the experience for customers. Those who want to see or hear, who see the captions, want to see the captions, can do that if you've got them. One of the other cool things coming into vogue, and it's again back to science, and it takes time, it's evolutionary, but dynamic live translations, on the fly translations from one language to another. I don't know if you all remember the universal translator in Star Trek, but that's out there in various platforms. It's not perfect. If you go from a Western language and maybe convert to like a Latin-based language or something, there, the word order is a little different, but you get the gist. And again, transcripts become permanent records, which is nice to have. Broadcasters absolutely need to care about this. And we have what's growing in radio is actually neat. There's a station in Washington, D.C., WAMU, which is a public radio station. They caption their live programming to their website 24/7. Their chief engineer, head of engineering, Rob Bertrand, had this idea a couple of years ago because of the very high number of deaf and hard of hearing folks, mostly related to like Gallaudet University there. And what a great thing because if you're deaf or hard of hearing, you cannot listen to radio. You can't, or it's very hard. So captioning radio is kind of a neat thing that makes it more accessible. So content creators. So clearly they need to caption their content. Content owners as well need to have it captioned if they're worried about ADA lawsuits, if it's not going over the air. Venue owners need to be more concerned about these things. Sports venues, theaters, airports, stuff like that. Sometimes it's for messaging. Sometimes it's just so more people in the room can enjoy content from these TVs, and we'll get to that in a sec. But sometimes it's legislated within local jurisdictions. More cities are requiring captions to be on televisions. So not just FCC and over the air, but actually just recorded stuff of any type. So mobile developers, because of course, many of us have our smartphones or mobile devices with us, and we definitely want to be able to, see some captions on that. What if we're, in a group of other people and we want to watch a video without them hearing it? Well, you can look right at the captions, of course. And systems integrators, because this is technical, they have to pass this data through. And one bummer of a frustrating thing is that there are folks doing webcasts now that they may even add. We know certainly plenty of customers that they want to use their existing hardware encoders, but those encoders may be older, and or their manufacturer may not have updated the firmware to accommodate caption data. So they may have to, forklift some hardware that no longer works if they want to add captions. And so that's something a systems integrator has to kind of keep aware of, is does all the equipment along the air chain support caption data? A little bit about the ADA. By the way, I keep talking. Anybody have any questions or comments? Everybody still awake? Okay, cool. All right. ADA, there's a lot of material in reading it. You can Google it for more, but it's a civil rights kind of law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. And being deaf or hard of hearing is certainly one. And also a little more arcane, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. As a paraphrase, prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies, U.S. government, in other words. And they have an ongoing initiative to make more and more of their content throughout the branches of the military and other parts of the government. All parts have it accessible. So it continues. This is, I bet those of you in TV can have this memorized, all right? The FCC. And in a minute, we'll see what many lawsuits are asking for, or that the ADA wants. But the FCC is looking for captions that must, be spoken, or captions. I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing or not, but basically it has to be synchronous. It has to be contextually accurate and complete. They have to be in a place on the visual signal that does not compete with the content on that screen, if at all possible. And with so many different types of content out there, that's always a difficult thing to do. But these are the goals by the FCC. They don't regulate what's not over the air, right? So just like I said earlier, will air, was aired, or is airing. The National Association for the Deaf, though, they are very interested in getting content, fully captioned out there. I think the next slide is actually where yeah, here we go. Yeah, the NAD wants all pre-recorded and live programming 24/7, of course. So you never know who can access that, and someone might not be able to hear it. Access to emergency broadcast, that makes a lot of sense, including weather captioned by real-time technology. A great example for an ASR is if you're a broadcast station and you have a imminent tornado popping up, do you have a captioner to caption what the news person is coming on via an alert and saying it? Or for radio for that matter. So yeah, that's important. That's life safety. Few examples here of lawsuits. The National Association for the Deaf sued under the ADA MIT and Harvard, and those schools lost. Their content, some of their content was not captioned. Online lectures, courses, podcasts. So wow. And that certainly sends an earthquake or tremors throughout the university and higher learning industry. NPR, you would think that they would be progressive about these things, but of course, captioning costs money. No matter how you do it, it's going to cost money. And if you've got decades of content that need to be captioned, that's going to cost some money. So no matter, everyone would love to snap their fingers and have everything captioned, but that's hard to do. But NPR was sued and lost due to their some lack of content. Netflix, this was a few years ago, 2014. Also, Amazon got sued as well for some of their content not being captioned. And again, the FCC, well, interesting program there. If something's playing on Netflix, how do you know that it might or might not be on the air one day if it was never yet on the air? It's hard to look forward like that. So some of these rules are kind of interesting to read in today's large streaming environment. I talked about venues. Seattle now requires captioning on TVs and bars and restaurants and stadiums. Ann Arbor, a little town, college town here in Michigan, they require the same thing. I think they have a size requirement. I don't know if it's 13 inches or what, but there might be a size requirement in certain cities. That varies. But you know, if you're a restaurant or bar owner or any place that has a TV on, you know, that's something to be aware of. I mentioned Google, of course, they're the big folks out there when it comes to videos that are online, but there are others as well. But Google's been doing an incredible job, and not just looking for and adding as part of their search metadata the caption data of videos, but years ago they started doing OCR as well, and literally trying. I don't know how often they do this for all of their videos, but OCRing what is on that screen, which is a nice way to kind of pull information from on-air graphics or stuff like that. Even if there is no metadata or caption data to go with it, it's something. It helps somebody kind of navigate somewhere in there. And just imagine this is a bit of a digression here, but imagine if you're in radio and you've got an hour-long interview with someone. If you have a caption file to go with that, you can just type in the word you're looking for, and it'll tell you where in that file, and therefore where in that video that word is. Otherwise, you're going to have to listen to the whole recording to find a particular point where they're talking about something. You know, that's a powerful example. Sometimes in video, it's a little bit, it might be easier because you can visually also search through, but even then, a video interview that's an hour or two long, you know, sometimes you got to, captions will help you find that little nugget there. So here we're talking about kind of more of a venue environment also for captioning, and that is digital signage. Literally, if you're in a mall or on some kind of a retail, you know, I would say like Manhattan, but something like that where there's retail stores along a street, and you'll see lots of displays out there. If there's a couple people on that screen talking or one person, if that's not captioned, unless there's speakers outside, which in a lot of these places aren't allowed, you won't know what they're saying. It may be audible on the inside if there's speakers in the place, but if there's, you know, not too good for the outside. There are factories, lots of big plants and factories, car plants, what have you, that build things that have noises going on. Digital signage is powerful in those places to let employees know what's going on, and, you know, changes to the workflow and factory news, what have you. If there's, that's not always just text. Sometimes that's people talking. That needs to be captioned so that you can see on the screen what they're saying. You know, oh, this is a great one, I think. I mean, typical Saturday or Sunday, you know, football season now. You go to your local sports bar to watch one of your teams or restaurants or what have you, but they may have dozens of TVs around the place. They may have only one, well, they're going to have only one game coming over the speakers. So, you know, how's those 3 or 4 other teams doing? You see the score, you may be watching the play-by-play, but you don't get the essence of that unless the captions are on, so you can see what the commentators are talking about. So again, that's important for anybody who wants to watch some sports, whether or not they're hard of hearing or not.
Hey Bill, on
Yeah.
the brand captions, do you mean that the captions are sponsored by, or
Absolutely.
is there something that's in the actual caption? Okay.
Yep. You read ahead there, because the now challenge there is if there's a lot of dialogue going on, you may not have excess room in that caption stream to throw in sponsored by XYZ company. So you have to kind of place these things where they, you know, where there's a little bit of extra room. You know, and that might literally be a quiet point in some coverage of something or a sports game. But yeah, branding can either be the name of somebody underwriting the cost for the captioning or something else. So, yep. I'm not aware of any way to get logos inserted into captions. I have not seen anything that relates to that coming down the pike. So it's not like you can throw up a logo in a caption. You know, I say caption stream. It's not really a stream exactly, right? It's just a stream of characters. So got to be careful when I say stream, and that I don't mean streaming, but just, you know, series of letters. Yeah. So yeah, great example. Atlanta, this venue they built a couple years ago in a Mercedes-Benz Stadium, 2,000 televisions around the place. Now, the one question I have is, what are the laws in Atlanta? And then another question is, how do you caption? I mean, what defines a television? I don't have answers here, but that is a one big old wraparound video screen right there. Is that one video screen, or is each, you know, when you divide up a large virtual screen into different segments, then you've got a bunch of smaller screens. Do each of those have to captions? I don't know. That's really something that if there are local laws, you know, venue developers need to kind of stay on top of that. One of the cool things about, like I said earlier, with captioning is that it's, once you do this, whether it's a human creating the text or an ASR creating the text, once you have that text, it's just data. And then you can translate that really easily. And basically, you know, the United Nations, what an example of humans doing so much there. For every country in the UN, there's a separate human listening to whoever is speaking at that podium, speaking into their own microphone and from a quiet room, so that their customer can understand that language, or, you know, in their own language. There's a whole lot of conversations going on there in real time. We, as the regular folks that don't actually have, you know, people to translate near us, we you know, for us, don't have that benefit. But when you start digitizing this voice and getting it into data, then it's easier to run it through a translation engine, is what I'm getting to, an automated way to do that. And those are getting a whole lot better. It's, you know, like I said, right now, the biggest challenge is getting the AI smart enough to tweak the word order. It's easy to do now. Once you have text, it's easy to do a word for word translation, and to dozens of languages. And we do that, but it's not, you know, the state of the art is always evolving. So it's kind of fun to watch, literally that universal translator. Yeah, I have the slide in here for no reason at all. I ran across it. You have to laugh that somebody's trying to put a 1/8 inch TRS into an RCA port. I mean, I don't think it's going to fit. Last time I tried, it didn't fit. So, but I still, I like it. I like it. Oh, and okay. So any questions? Because I'm going to talk about sidecars and transcripts a little bit. Oh, okay, cool. So
actually, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, Jason Clifford here. How do you guys, with the automated captioning, how do you guys figure out the placement? I chimed in a little late into this meeting, but
placement. You mean like on screen?
Yes. You know, because we handle a lot of spot stuff. So, you know, it's, you know, a lot of times we're running into legal, you know, less, you know, lower thirds as far as like names and titles and stuff, but more legal content, you know. And then a lot of times it's just action, you know, and you know, you run into something that there's, you know, maybe something going on at the bottom of the screen, and that now becomes up a third thing. So how is that placement figured out with the automated?
So the automated is literally just creating the data, right? So you still need to have an embedder that actually embeds the SDI. Yeah, and so we have our own integrated embedder. You can control the offsets and font size, so, you know, X, Y, and scale. There's a national shopping channel that's using us that has, of course, product graphics and a phone number on the bottom of the screen. So they very specifically have to have the captions a little bit over to the left and a little bit up, right? And so, you know, it's basically based on the encoders that you're using. Some encoders, this is a part of this I don't exactly know, but I believe there's a way to get it in live captioning, the captions to offset based on like a GPI or something. I've seen that done. Well, of course, in post, that's easy to do.
Yes.
So now what I'm thinking about, I'm not sure if I've seen that actually done live or not. Because it would be nice to have that ability and through an encoder to take an offset from like the graphics suite, right? And when a certain graphic is overlaid in the lower third, do something to offset the graph or the captions a little higher.
Yeah. And I just want to have one comment. You were talking about benefits of human captioning, and with our caption provider, you know, actually, I'd love to touch base with you tomorrow, actually, if you don't mind. You know, one thing that, you know, because again, we deal with spot content a lot, is, you know, when you automate the sort of caption process internally for us, you know, they've caught in stuff where, you know, for whatever reason, maybe the narration didn't end up onto the stereo mix of the proxy file we send them, you know, and something simple like that. Or all of a sudden, you know, maybe we use black detection a lot for detecting length, you know, spot, you know, length and content. And sometimes you have someone who has like a 1 second slug in the middle of their TV spots, and then you send them, say, an 18-second commercial instead of a 30. You know,
Yeah.
so you know, and one of the great aspects of the human interaction is, you know, they've caught errors on our end that might not be, you know, that's part of our automation process. You know, like
yeah, automation. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. No, so there's a lot of benefits of the human, you know. But that being said, my experience so far is with the automated is very accurate so far.
Wow, that's
you know?
well, it's cool. I appreciate you saying that. But
Yeah.
and you, so like you mentioned, you stepped in a little bit as this was in progress, and
Yeah.
and yeah, like I said earlier on, humans are the best. They're also hard to find and the most expensive, but you know, it kind of depends. Everyone's got a different business model and a different need, a different workflow, different needs. Sounds like you have a pretty advanced workflow yourself. So
no, it's not that advanced, but just it needs to be accurate and done quick. You know, like I said, we're dealing with ad agencies and advertisers, and you know, things need to be at the station at 7 o'clock at night or by 7 o'clock at night, and you get the stuff from the post house at 6:30.
Not a lot of comfort zone there.
Yeah. So so it you know, and just in full disclosure, we use Vitech. You know, so.
Excellent company.
But
Excellent
they're
company.
very good.
They do very good stuff. Yeah, and they've gotten large because they do really well.
Yeah,
you know, and they have a big global footprint. So yeah.
But I'd love to figure out ways to, you know, improve on those costs. You know?
Cool. Yeah, I would love to help. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I think my email's at the end of this. So.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Cool, Jason. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So now if there's no more questions, we're going to quickly jump into like sidecars and transcripts, just because I keep mentioning those, but I haven't really shown you what those are. For offline captioning, meaning captioning an existing file, whether it's video or audio. Well, in this case, let's keep it to video. You've probably all heard of Adobe Premiere or Adobe Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, or Final Cut Pro, right? Final Cut Pro 10, actually. Those are, you know, Avid, of course, a lot of really popular, stable video editing platforms, and they all allow you to embed captions into their video stream. But to do that, you have to have a caption file. You have to have a text file that is time-coded and in a format that's compatible with those software applications. And they all have different programs. You know, if you're looking to caption, whether it's live or file-based, make sure that you can create what are called sidecar files from it that is compatible with the offline editing program you need. A sidecar to this comment about sidecars is there are playout and automation systems too that allow you to take a video that hasn't any captions and merge with it a caption text file at the actual point of playout. So that's, again, another sidecar format. So you don't always have to embed the caption data directly in the video and export it and keep it as that. You could, depending on your playout system, do it live on the fly. So, and there's a few things out there that do that really well. So I'm just going to scroll through these examples. These are all screenshots of literally just Notepad in Windows. This is actually our own format that we use just so users have a very clean index of when these words were said at a time point. Because as you'll see, the next formats are take up a little more space or aren't quite as packed efficiently. This is the SRT format. And you can see just and typically 31 characters, 32 characters is about the limit. So that's about how many characters per time point here. And when you drag these into a video editing application, it knows automatically how to line all that up with the video that's in there, and usually parses it out as little segments for each of these lines. And then you can go in there and edit that too. This is the VTT format, Web VTT. You notice there's not a whole lot of difference between most of these. SMI or SAMI is what this one stands for. I don't remember what it stands for. This one's really funny, hexadecimal. If anybody can read what this says without using software, I owe you a cup of coffee or two. This is Signage format, or SCC. And there you go. Oh, and there's one more format. I forget. This one's really fascinating. I have no idea what this one says, but that's the formal redacted version of captions. Oh, and I did mention radio. That's right. I forgot I added the slide. This is live now. I mean, I don't exactly know what the programming is at this minute, but it should be up now if you go to wamu.org/captions-live. And I just got to say that was pretty neat what they're doing there. Again, as I said earlier, Jason, I don't know if you heard it, but you know, in radio, if you're deaf or hard of hearing, you can't take up the
Yeah.
content. So, so a few different related areas to captioning. So and that picture, I don't know if you guys remember this thing called NAB. There was this big show in Vegas every year. This picture is from 2019. Gosh, seems like a century ago. That's our product, actually captioning the main stage, and we had large monitors on both sides of the stage. The bottom half is just our logo, you know, static, but the top is this constantly scrolling 3 lines of caption data or text. And that's actually right there, a conversation from the president of New Tech with a British accent. And it was captioning really, really well. Not perfect. There were a couple errors in it when of this little video clip I grabbed this from, but you know, it's that's another thing is captioning so what I see with, at least with what we work with, is surprisingly good with accents unless they get really thick. Then it gets hard. If you're working with content and you use humans and you're thinking about ASR and you've got a lot of accents, do a couple sample tests with whatever vendors you're talking to, just to kind of see how it works with the thick accents that you think the worst you might have, and see how it works. And by the way, that's called CART, Communications Access Real-Time Translation. That's originally a stenographer in a room captioning to a screen in that room, and may not have anything to do with television or video at all. Well, except to get the video of the captions on the screen. And that's common also in churches and other large areas of groups getting together in one room where you just need a monitor with the captions on it if you're not doing like in-house video or something. We've all heard of secondary audio program. That's an NTSC standard. There's another thing called descriptive audio. That's a voice narration. That's typically someone describing a scene that's going on. That's interesting. I've never seen actually a descriptive audio captioned, but that would get awkward because that's also stepping on the words, the dialogues that the people are saying. Because when you watch a movie or a TV show that has descriptive audio, there's not a lot of time for the human, that third party ghost voice that you hear, to describe what's going on. Well, the characters are having their own dialogues. I guess it's easy in Star Wars, big massive ship opening sequence. You could say that, but so those are assistive related technologies. And of course subtitles. There's lots of content out there now that has different subtitles, which is neat. I mean, sometimes certain movies have 4 or 5 different subtitles that are available to watch. Once in a while, I click the wrong button on a remote and I've got Chinese up there. I'm like, oh wait, how do I go back to, which is fascinating. Winding it down here, but a little bit from what my research has been showing in the future is fascinating and scary. It's always both when it comes to this stuff. But computers are great at analyzing text, and a computer can tell where a conversation is going by analyzing its text. A computer can also skim thousands of hours of captions from thousands of hours of videos really fast, and therefore that's data mining, right? But it can also tell by how words are grouped what the sentiment of the sentence is. And by listening to the audio, a computer can tell if somebody is like me speaking at fairly a moderate, medium pace or something, or if I'm really excited or high pitch or slurring my words or any of these things. And the software starts to understand if somebody's unhappy or happy, or inebriated or sleepy, or maybe somebody's new to a new language and is just having trouble finding the right words. The right software can find that, which is helpful in a way, because in a lot of ways, call centers can use that to understand. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Wired magazine had this great story about call centers using AI speech powered by behavioral sciences, software understanding the mood of the person talking. And there's a spin out called Cogito that was started to support call centers in like healthcare, financial. The Pentagon's using it. I suppose if a call comes in and somebody's really frantic at the Pentagon, they might be under duress. You know, if that's a general calling in, you might want to forward him up the ladder to somebody quicker, or her, you know, quickly get an urgent attention. But I mean, these icons, the part of the article talks about these icons would show up at the call center operator's computer to help them understand what the computer thinks is their mood. I think the call center operator probably can tell at that point, but remember, this is all being recorded. These days, all these things are being recorded, including this metadata. So, you know, for training purposes, and even teaching the AI, you know, the AI may give you a frowning face because it thinks the person talking is angry, but maybe that person just has perhaps an accent or a speech impediment or something, or a different language is you know, that they're learning. So it's not always right, which will make things more interesting in life as we go down the road. You know, software works great until it doesn't. But yeah, so that's about it. I think captioning technology is going to continue to obviously evolve. It's going to get even better. The errors will get lower over time. Never perfect. Same with humans. You know, viewers continuously have more power because they ultimately, content is king, right? Well, the consumer of the content really is, and they really want to have captioned content. Once you see it, you kind of don't want to let go of it. And like I said, ASR is not just for the hard of hearing and deaf community, but we can thank them for its origination. But transcripts, you know, and the whole sports bar scenario or digital signage, also great benefits to that. You know, if you're building a venue, check your local laws because you might have to add some captioning, and then make sure your technology supports it, like I said. So, and be creative. I actually don't know what I meant by that. Whatever, be creative. There we go. Any questions? Comments, observations?
Bill, this is Marty. Can you hear me? I finally have.
Loud and clear.
Oh, good, great. Good old iPhone. Beat the computer.
Oh, it saved the day.
Yeah, thanks. It was a great presentation. I have a question. What type of things, and you know, this might be an odd question to ask the people that make the equipment, but what kind of failures do you have? How are they QC'd and say repaired in real time? What do you need for backup?
Great question, actually, because yeah, well, of course, technology never fails, so we never have had to replace the system. No, you know, in our system, our own system that I can speak of, it's a Windows-based architecture. We build the system completely here at our facilities, and we burn it in, and we tell customers don't do anything to it, don't install anything else to it, turn off Windows Update. You know, keep it off the internet unless you need to have some internet connectivity to it. But with ours, you can keep it completely on-prem, and so there's no, you know, if you do that, there's no way to, you know, not too much of a concern. And as a vendor, of course, we always have hot standby products, you know, on the shelf. And some major networks, customers of ours, 3-letter networks, have backup systems that are literally running in parallel. And if they ever do have a failure, they can cut over to one, and then we'll overnight them a replacement. And because these are always Windows machines, you can always keep backing up the configuration files and log files and stuff to a central server, so that if you do have to do a hot swap, you can load, or at least keep in sync, the captions, the log files and stuff like that, if you have a hard drive failure or something.
What are some of the common failures? Does it look like gibberish? Does it just quit?
So you mean like, you mean like if the AI gets a mind of its own and starts
exactly. In other words, sorry, Dave, we can't do that.
Yeah. Then it says it wants a raise and it goes on vacation for 3 weeks. Oh, I mean, it's these things are run 24/7. So it is always being, because it's software, it's always possible that something could get in there and you know, cause some of this. But I mean, I think mostly we see, I think the gibberish we see comes typically if customers have like an external encoder, SDI inserter encoder, and we only would see this up front. At the beginning is what is the bit rate? Like 8N1 is the serial, you know, part of the protocol. And the bit rate, the baud rate has to be accurate as too. And if it isn't, then the inserter could misread the characters we're sending out for something else. But that's usually caught right up front as we're commissioning a system. So
Does anyone ever order two systems and link
yes.
them? Yes.
Yeah. There's several networks in the U.S. National broadcast networks that are doing that right now, and they pay a few bucks more a month to have another one running on hot standby just in case. Because if you're over the air, and all of a sudden your captioning goes out, you might get a letter from the FCC. So it's good to have a backup.
Yeah, that was actually my next question: is if you have a failure, is it, will they how quickly will they come down on you?
That I don't know. I think they have to get a complaint, and I don't know how many they need to get, but I think they first need to get a complaint. I don't think they're watching every. I'm not an expert on that, on the regulatory side though, so might want to ask your lawyer.
Bill, I know you're probably somewhat familiar with PEG stations. We have a lot of them in Massachusetts. I think you may have a few out there at PEG stations, and I'm just wondering how successful that's been. How are they using it? I don't believe they're legally required to have them yet.
Yeah, if they're not over the air, their meetings, and because in PEG for everyone else that may not know, typically that's municipalities, universities, nonprofits, stuff like that. And so every city and township and borough in the country is a PEG station potentially. If they have a township meeting or a town meeting, they, if they're broadcasting that to their constituency, they're probably streaming it or using, Files or Comcast or both, or something like that. I was just talking to a PEG customer today in Colorado that they feed Comcast and YouTube live streams of their meetings once a month. And typically they like the idea of, okay, so again, it's often it's dollar related because, if they start captioning, if it's not legally required, they have to decide to spend money that they may not think they have to, but others have been sued or suits have been, brought against PEG non-captioning PEG broadcasters because they haven't had captions. So the question is, do you kind of, do you play that game and wait for somebody in your constituency to sue you? Or do you, we know of K through 12 schools that have actually, one particular I'm thinking of in the Northeast that took all of their content offline because they were afraid of getting a lawsuit. And again, it was not on the air kind of stuff. It was just K through 12 video on demand stuff. And they were afraid that they could get sued. So they took it all off to caption it, to put it back up.
How have the courts treated this? They've been lenient, or have they just told the line the FCC rules? Or
well, yeah, it's FCC again doesn't have much input on non over the air broadcasters, the PEG streams. So I don't really have a list of cases that I can call up, but I've seen them go both ways. But I think generally they err on the side of disabilities and making content more accessible. It's kind of hard to argue against that. It could be maybe argued that it could be burdensome to some smaller municipalities because it's expensive, and some are very small, don't have much of a budget. So, but I really don't have any great examples there.
Are they if anyone else wants to jump in there, please do.
There was a recent virtual trade show done by ACM, and they had a session in that on closed captioning. They had a guy who is dealing with who was actually creating captioning machinery, and a lawyer who both said that, if the FCC gets a complaint, you have to do something about it. So he says it's really going to come down hard on the PEGs very soon if they don't start doing something.
Interesting. The PEGs, though it's FCC, right? For the moment, I've heard rumblings that the FCC may become more interested in regulating streaming.
It may be even more so due to the ADA rather than the FCC.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that. Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have another situation because I worked for several years in immigrant communities, one of which did not really have. They have it, so they have their own language. It's a Creole, Portuguese Creole language. It's a Cape Verdeans here in southeastern New England. And I worked for that program for quite some time. And I worked for them for like 15 years before the government in Cape Verde decided that they need to establish an orthography for the spoken language. And I don't think they have still completely formalized it yet.
Wow.
So how is captioning working as far as translating goes with things like that with the Creole languages, because there are dozens and dozens of them around the world.
Yeah,
and they're all different because they all have the Creole base, but they have the other language that mixes in there.
Yeah, that is a big question because I know with our translation technology, there's like 35 or 40 different languages that we can, globally that we can translate to, but that's nowhere near the dialects or subdialects that you speak about. Yeah, that there's a lot of different, even in the United States, just in English, just the accents you might hear, the thickest of New England to the furthest down south, the same word will sound very different. And that's not even at all talking about what you're talking about. But that's a problem, because if you speak a language like that is very limited in popularity, I guess is the word, that's going to be more challenging.
And the orthography that they came up with, although a good deal of the wording in the language, it comes from Portugal, they have not used the Portuguese orthography to spell those words. They've done it more phonetically. And I can see where that would be very confusing to an AI to hear a word that is pronounced the same in both languages, but each one has a different spelling for it. And not all Cape Verdeans do speak Portuguese. They have to learn that in school when they first go to school.
Yeah, and it's funny because the AI the AIs that we have finite words in them. There's over 1 million in the English. I don't want to use the word dictionary because it's not really a dictionary. It's lexicon, and that's a lot of words. But even there's words that aren't, that we use in regular daily parlance that probably aren't in that list. And there are absolutely words that shouldn't be said. If you're, by the way, whoever is looking for an ASR application, or even frankly using a human captioner, make sure there's a way to block bad words from getting through. We have a block list that has about 1,400 naughty words in it, singular and plural. So a lot of them are just duplicated. But even then, that could go wrong. There's a television network that does work for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Well, the word breast is in our list just because that could come out incorrectly, be used improperly. But they want that word to get through because that's a very important part of the programming. So,
Then there's also issues like I had to work on a Haitian translation project one time, and I had 3 Haitian translators translating the same English script, and each one of them came up with different ways of translating it. And when you put all 3 of them together, they came up with a 4th one too.
It amazes me how this whole world can even communicate in the first place with so many different languages that are out there.
We are truly the Tower of Babel.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
earlier in the presentation, you made a mention of different fonts that are selectable in some cases. Can you just give us an overview of where those fonts are loaded in, how they're put together in a system? You can speak just to ENCO if that's all you can describe to us, but I'm curious about that because I just learned recently about a new font that is designed for dyslexic people.
Oh,
and we're talking about the accessible media, and I'm curious just to find out if someone wanted to load that font onto a system and make it visible for their caption reading, is that something that could be done?
Yeah, so the font selection that I've so first of all, our system puts out a standard Helvetica font through the inserter, and it's a very simple, no frills kind of, very similar to 608, original line 21 caption. So the really intricate digital television, the fonts that spec allows for, we don't create those kind of fancy fonts. But I think most of the time I've noticed this just on my own, streaming through an Amazon Fire and an Apple TV and on my phone. You can call up different fonts through that GUI, but those, as you know, those are just generated at the the end user side. But it makes you wonder, could a custom font like that be available, like an Apple product or an Android, or a Roku box, another great popular streaming, box. So yeah, we keep ours pretty simple. When we do the overlay or the embedding, now if you're doing video in post, you can still take our caption data and convert that to any kind of fancy font that your video. I say fancy font, that's not a technical term. But
I understand, but that would be for open captioning that you're talking about, putting something that is going to be displayed as a subtitle or an open caption.
I think in post customizing the font in post-production is something I can't really speak to too much. If it's embedded, yeah, because that could be, I don't know what it might depend on the editing application. Yeah, there's a lot of detail in that. So
yeah, no, it's just a curiosity. I didn't know if you knew anything about at the consumer end, how those fonts get installed and how one would select something or install something that is unique, like this dyslexic font.
So I'll say that, not that this is thorough research really, but we don't see much customization in fonts, even in digital, ATS3. It's just get it out there. Helvetica is very clean, simple, but it does, that DTV spec does support a lot of different fonts.
Okay, thank you.
So
Thank
yeah.
Bill, is the AI sophisticated enough to interpret context?
No, not ours. Ours is designed to really just interpret words, but you're thinking like the sentiment analysis kind of point.
Yeah, that and the fact that there are so many words in English and other languages that completely change meaning depending on how they're used in a sentence.
Yeah. So okay, maybe actually the answer is half yes, because when I did mention the statistical analysis that it uses to look at the word, like if you painted your barn red and then you just read a book, how does it know which? Well, it is using statistical analysis, looking at the grammar structure. And if you read a book, you didn't read a book, you read a book. It knows those words belong to each other. So I suppose, yes, actually, I mean, I think you could get that, extend that even more greatly. And, but like against sentiment analysis, stuff like that, but that's kind of outside the captioning realm. So
has there been much, say a system were created that just did everything phonetically, you think that would be disturbing or people would reject it, or has it been tried?
Oh, that's a good question. We typically we're told to get it right, to get the words spelled correctly, not phonetically. So that's a whole nother different angle. I've never, okay, now you make me wonder let's come up with a typical paragraph. Is there some phonetic generator on the interwebs that we could pass it through and then get back a phonetically spelled paragraph? I wonder what that would look like.
It's a
You'll
good
wind up with all kinds of issues with alternative spellings for the same sounds.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. Reminds me of what you were just talking about, Paul. Yeah. Words are amazing. Babel, whoever said that, you really nailed it.
Bill, I got a question. What can you talk to about WCAG, like website W3C website compliance? We get a lot of advertisers who advertise through streaming services that now are requesting that all their spots are compliant to WC3. And a lot of that with the captioning, obviously that's just more caption data, but with video, but it can have to do with text and contrast of text overlays and subtitles overlays on backgrounds, but also who's talking. In other words, they would, if it's a narrator, they want it described as a narrator.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that. So there's, you had kind of a couple of things there because, right. There are ways to, like in our technology, we can indicate speaker change, but we insert a pair of chevrons to show when the AI thinks somebody else is talking, basically keyed to tone of voice changes or frequency of voice, which means it can get a false positive of somebody changing their voice like that, but not too often. And also that same AI determines punctuation generally. Did you finish the sentence? Are you up speaking to a question mark or maybe an exclamation point? Best guess to try to make it more clear. So there's some of that going on now. If there's different people talking, is there a way to label their name in front of their caption? We have a technology to do that that we call mic check, that we can do that based on finite voices attached to finite signals. So that's not as much the AI doing it as much as the technology architecture before the AI, but there is a way to do that. But generally an AI, we're not aware of an AI that can hear a voice and know that that's George or Chris or Bob or Shelley. That's, or at least not one that's in regular, the CIA might have that. Okay, they probably do.
No, because we actually had a question the other day about captioning with a narrator is in italics, and if it's someone on screen, it's not in italics. It's
yes.
So
like on the phone, a distant voice type of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times you see that because that's done in post. So that there's that luxury of time to do that. But that's kind of back to almost Marty's point about what I was calling sentiment analysis. Not exactly is that it's not really sentiment analysis, but the AI getting smarter to figure that a voice on the phone has a narrow bandwidth. Can the typically, right? That's how they make it sound like the voice of the phone. Can the AI do that? I mean, maybe one day. I would bet, one day it can do a lot more. This is just beginning.
And that WCAG stuff is just it's how it applies to video is super complicated. I mean, I wouldn't say super complicated. It's just seems so up for discretion at some point.
And I might be curious more about what you're looking at, because I mean, typically we focus on deriving the caption data, and then when we, like if you're doing a webcast and a paid broadcaster or a simulcast or a concert or whatever, you're generating a stream. We'll inject the data in the SDI, but then it still has to go through a hardware encoder like a Teradek or a VBrick or Aja has AJA has the Hilo, and those are economical. There's even more grandiose, expensive units out there, and then they pass it to the hardware. I'm sorry, it's to the that hardware encoder passes it through to the streaming CDN. Then they manage how those captions look from there. And that's so
post,
and then just how they have it, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Vimeo or what have you, their captions all look different on the browser depending on who's they are.
Absolutely.
So lots of chains or pieces in the chain, links in the chain.
Bill, what is the latency? You might have mentioned it, but I'm wondering, how do you measure it, and what is the latency? And finally, has anyone thought of delaying the video to reduce the audio latency?
We do that actually. We have a way of just within our system of delaying the video to, we call, I'm not sure exactly what we call it, lip sync, sync for lack of a better word, but we can delay the video. The first part of your question is 3 to 4 seconds on average, and that's typically the AI doing that speech to text statistical analysis. And again, I may have mentioned earlier on that some sentences come out pretty quick because it knows all the words with confidence, and then another sentence might take a little less time. I'm sorry, a little more time, another second to come out because it might be waiting for certain words to guarantee it knows what words are in that sentence. But so that's about 3 to 4 seconds, comparable to humans. But yes, you can slow that video through it by just using a delay within our equipment, a video delay. I always personally like to see captions delayed by at least a couple seconds, because when I hear the word, it takes me maybe a second to realize I didn't know the word, and then I look down to see the caption. So sometimes I actually see captions right in real time with the words, and I don't like that because I want a little time in there. So I don't know.
speaking rate is going to have something to do with it too. If somebody's talking a mile a minute,
Yes.
you know, going to have more trouble.
Yeah, yeah. It's in different engines do different. Different do differently with that kind of quality. I'm pretty pleased to see how ours does when people talk really fast. So unless they talk so fast that they really start rounding off the edges of their words, and they start almost like slurring them together, kind of talking real fast. But yeah, the humans actually have challenges with that too.
What's coming up in this field? What's right on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
Definitely. Well, first of all, more accuracy, right? I mean, although it's nice that you guys have commented the accuracy, and it matters because that's the first and foremost importance of it. But still improvements. Definitely still improvements in both the punctuation and speaker change that I've talked about. The speed, I don't know if the speed's ever going to get that much faster, because it really, to be accurate, it wants that time to check these other words after ambiguous words, right? And then there was one more thing. I just completely forgot about it. Forgot what I was going to say. The first thing on my mind, actually, I was saving it for last. And naturally, that's my buffer.
I mean, does it have a vocabulary?
So yeah, interesting. So I lexicon or vocabulary, yes. In the English language, it's over 1 million words. I don't know the exact number, but we do add to it. There is, in our technology, there's a way to also create what are called filters to error correct. If you recall back when last year, Dr. Anthony Fauci was, his name was out there, and it still is. It would caption Anthony just fine, but Fauci is not a word in English. It would typically, the biggest error we would see is something like FAO and then cheese, because it thinks Fauci's, So if somebody said Dr. Fauci, you would say you would see caption, it would caption Fau and cheese, or cheese or chi or something. Depends how someone says it. So there's ways we have filters that you can put in and correct for that, so that whenever this one set of words come out, you correct it by saying, no, it's this set of words. And that's great for, especially for like news stations that have a regular set of anchors or advertising names or underwriting names, stuff like that, where, you want to make sure it gets it right. The trick there is we can do up to 3 words pattern matching, but you got to be careful if you do it with 1 word. A neat little example is we were doing some captioning of a live event. Actually, it was at the NAB radio show, and they were talking about Generation Z. That word is not in that language, that vocabulary. So I thought it might have been hearing the word Jonesy and the word Genzyme and the letters GNC, which I didn't know was a word. So as those errors came in, I just did real-time updates to the filter to correct for that, because hopefully those words wouldn't come up. Another one is codec and Kodak. That was an audio program, and they were talking about audio codecs. It was hearing the word Kodak sometimes. So I corrected it that when it hears Kodak, make sure it spells out Kodak instead. Now, if they were having a conversation about film and audio processing in the same session, that could be interesting. So,
has anyone ever used this with iMag? If you're familiar with iMag?
Yes, yeah. So you like large in-room closed circuit video?
Well, big screen,
exactly.
Big screen stuff at a stadium, and
yep. Yeah, a lot of times if it's really big, like a live concert or something, they might want to have supplemental cart displays, like that NAB picture where there's one video monitor to the side of each side that has just the captions on it. They may not want to have the captions on the main central display. But again, that's a creative decision. But,
that leads directly into a question that I have with a PEG station in Sudbury, Mass. And when we have been obliged for the last couple of years to do captioning of the live town meetings. And I can foresee that that's going to branch out to all manner of other meetings happening in town, which right now are largely covered with Zoom, so they can take advantage of the Zoom captioning for those.
Right.
But back to the live town meetings, we typically do exactly what you were just describing. We have the main presentation screen in the middle, big in the auditorium, and I have a couple of sidecar screens that that we project a web page that is provided to us by a captioning operation down in Rhode Island. I forget the name of the people, but so far the town has been paying for that captioning service, and it's pretty straightforward. It comes back to us on a web page. We just project the browser and we're done. That's all well and good for the live auditorium, but we're also carrying this programming live, both on a high def stream on our website and on the channels which are both standard def channels from Comcast and Verizon. At least they are now for the next year or two, until they break down and give us a new contract with HD channels. But in any case, the reality of it is, if we're compressed down from high def into standard def and get the typically crappy signal at home, its legibility is very poor. So it needs to take a big to do open captioning there. Needs a big font, and it gets in the way. Now, farther down the road, we've got the opposite problem. If we invest in encoder and all the components we need to add the captioning, and a lot of that is available from our CDN provider, Castus. They have a system that captions in the cloud and sends it back out, and you get it on the channels and the stream. But now I've got to do the same thing in reverse, is take that caption information that we get off the closed caption encoder that's built into our broadcast stream, and to put it up on those by itself without the picture of the live action. Just put the captions up on the side screens in the auditorium for the audience to see. And so we have it both ways, and I'd like to not have to do the same thing twice, once for each situation. What are my options maybe now and going forward is to, and right now we're perfectly happy paying the $150 an hour for that caption service to happen during town meeting, because the town picks up the tab. But I don't want to have to keep paying that if we make a large investment in closed captioning equipment.
Yeah. It's always nice when somebody else puts the bill. Well, there's a few. I mean, the cart display technology. I try to, as Sept and SBE request, we try to keep these presentations fairly brand agnostic. So I try not to go too deep into our particular product, but we do have a native HTML port, a WebSocket that will display in real time the captions on a web page. And that's how we were doing it at NAB, is we just enlarged the captions in Google Chrome. Doesn't matter the browser. It doesn't have to be Chrome. It can be.
Still get the closed caption encoded to embed in your video stream.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the first part?
And if I take advantage of that HTML output to put on a web display, I still get the embedded data to put into my video stream. Yeah, in real time. Yeah, it's just a separate port, literally. Yeah, even if you're doing Telnet over IP to an external SDI encoder, like an Evertz 8508 or something. That's not it, but I can't. It's got an 8 in there. That you can do both, and it's real time. Let's see. But the other, I'm trying to think of the customer. There's a PEG customer out west in the US just a couple months ago at most that had the same problem you do about down converting. And there's some box made by either Blackmagic or AJA that does that. That'll pass through the captions from 708 down to 608.
And you know, I could dig that. I could dig for that if that's something that you might need. You know, just drop me your email if
Well,
you know. Or,
hopefully, we won't have to put up with standard.
yeah, I mean
for
that's
long.
when I was first asked by a colleague if such a thing exists. I'm like, why would that exist? But there are some unique needs where someone needs to down convert, and its output is BNC on, you know, NTSC on a BNC, not SDI. So you know, never twice the same color, I think, is what NTSC stands for.
Yeah, good riddance to that.
Completely.
Again.
All of us in PEG in Massachusetts are still dealing with SDI channels.
At least you've got SDI.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
I mean, one of the cool trends, cool meaning some engineers say, oh, I'm going to retire next year, is IP, right? And ST 2110 and all the cool things that can do, and, you know, routable, big heavy load on your switch, on your IT switch. But it's once, you know, that's where the future is all IP for video as well as audio. I mean, of course, we're using it here.
Is 4K also using 708, and how is ATSC 3.0 going to affect all of this?
Oh, you've got the best questions. I don't know about 4K. You know, again, most of our customers really are no one's doing 4K for that I can think of. This is why I love Google.
Might be in
I
Japan.
wonder. Okay, so yeah, the CA 608 spec, does that include resolutions as high as 4K or higher? I mean, could it be infinitely scalable? I don't know. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia here. There's a whole lot of data. You know, I mean, my response, my gut response is to say sure, but I don't really know how captions are handled within the stream of a 4K signal. I would think that's just up res, so it should be the same.
Well, that's good. That's the homework for the next meeting we do together, which we want to do eventually. This has been very good.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Anyone else questions?
I'm the person who does the website. So I've been listening to this with great, and this is very interesting discussion.
Coolness. Thanks.
So I just want to ask you some really dopey questions.
Okay. I have good dopey answers.
One thing is I noticed you had a PowerPoint. And theoretically, usually I put the PowerPoint on the website so people can follow the discussion afterwards. So when you get a chance, can you forward me your PowerPoint presentation and I'll post it?
So it's actually in Google Slides. It's a Google slide. It's not actually PowerPoint.
You can send that to me. Enough people will see it and they'll realize this is another format.
Yeah. Let me look and see how we would do that. I probably some of the imagery, I don't know if we have permission like that, but let me check with our marketing person.
All right.
Because so I think with the imagery that we have access to, they have different rights attached, but I'm not sure.
It was very easy for me to follow your presentation. So the truth of the matter is I don't really need the separate slide presentation. It was just so people could sort of follow it.
Yeah, no, let me find out tomorrow. And would I have your email, or since this is being recorded, perhaps you just want to email me yours, or
I will send you all the emails.
Oh,
I'll
fantastic.
send you all the emails.
Okay, just like a regular meeting where I get a piece of paper at the end. I forgot about those.
The second thing I want to ask you about is that you sort of have this meeting in two files. The first part is the first part of the meeting gets screwed up somehow, and then you picked it up. Are you and Paul going to be able to combine these two recordings, Paul?
Oh, you're muted. But I should think he'd be able to.
I'm sure I'll work out something. I have at least the first third on my hard drive. The other is on the cloud. We'll figure it out.
As long as the two of you guys are able to combine it into something you guys feel is acceptable, that would be perfect. The third question I have is I was listening to this presentation and I was getting lots of ideas, which is very dangerous for me. And I was thinking it would be very nice if people who are able to look at this on our website, if they can see some closed captioning on the discussion. And I am sort of thinking, and it would really be nice if you kept this as a, what do you guys call it, a sidecar? As a text form that can be played simultaneously with people playing the video.
That is creative.
And what I'm sort of thinking what would be nice is if I can put little drop-down menus next to the playback of the video, so people can sit there and they can change the language, because you were mentioning that it's possible for you guys to change the language if you like. So perhaps a couple of interesting languages like, say, German, French, Spanish, that kind of stuff. People will enjoy talking to us in different languages.
Norwegian is fun.
And I also think it would be nice if we could, people could change the size of the fonts that they see the closed captioning, so that way they can make your talking really big, because a lot of old people like to see letters big. And if we make a presentation like that for the playback of this file on our website, it's going to sell something. It's going to excite people. So I'm sort of thinking, do you think that this is possible for us to do? At least on this particular recording, I think people will think it's cute. So think about it a little bit.
Yeah, let me do that. Yeah.
Well, finally, I'm going to make this the last question, but can you, because this might be, I would think would be very valuable, can you caption a live Zoom meeting?
We can, absolutely. Yes. About a year and a half ago, we came out with, we built, when Zoom was all of a sudden taken over and there was not a way to caption it, we developed a piece of middleware that uses our engine and the filters and word lists and all of that to caption Zoom meetings. Now, of course, Zoom, everyone knows, they can caption themselves now they use, I think, I don't know this, but I've heard someone say that they think they use Microsoft, because after a while you can tell when you look. But I don't know this for a fact, so I could be wrong. But whatever, they use some third-party engine, but you can't teach it custom words. So if you're doing mission-critical broadcasting where accuracy is key, using a generic third-party captioning service may not get you the results.
Well, the way that I currently run our website is I put all the Zoom videos that we run on YouTube, but I can put them anywhere.
Yeah.
So if this particular one ends up getting posted on Zoom, and we can show a Zoom capability that has some sort of capability, like the ability to change the font and to change the language, I think people are going to enjoy playing with it a little bit. And you can send customers to see this.
Right.
And it'll look nice on a SMPTE website that actually gets viewers.
Oh,
Bob,
so think about it a little bit, but I'm willing to put a little effort into this because I think it'll just fascinate people.
You said it yourself. Your ideas are dangerous.
Bill, have you looked into porting this whole thing over to Linux-based product?
Well, in a broadcast space, Windows seems to be the most predominant OS you're going to find in a TOC. So for the moment, what we are doing is building out a more enhanced web-friendly GUI to the whole thing, though, which is a big trend in people expecting more web. We already have a built-in web API that you can access almost all the functions the same way that you can see the captions in a frame on a web page. You can control it remotely too, which is great for either. Well, I'd love to have that for, like, if, let's say you've got a user that is you don't want to give them full control over the program, but maybe just two buttons, start and stop. You can have two of those big green, big red buttons in HTML on a web page, and they just click start and stop. But anyway, so we're growing that out to be. We were going to show some interesting things at NAB that isn't there now. So, but we still independently will be showing these enhancements to make it more.
So I'm thinking that for the SMPTE website, we'll put this particular Zoom meeting wherever you think is the best. But to show some unusual capability with this closed captioning, including the ability to change the language a little, to change the fonts, which the size of the fonts is going to be very interesting for old people to watch.
Oh yeah, the font size we can't change though. That would be from the viewer's tool software, whatever their their web browser, however, whatever streaming CDN you're using, and their web GUI. That's where the font change would come from. So that part
right now I'm using YouTube, but I'm
Okay.
open to anything that involves a little more work for me, but that people will think will be kind of interesting to look at, and that the SMPTE organization does willing to put some effort into these things.
And by the way, I am a section manager of SMPTE in Pittsburgh, and so I can relate to the website being key to keep people coming back, checking out what we're up to, and trying to keep SMPTE together in each of our towns, since we can't have all these in-person meetings right now.
I think I met him recently. I forgot his name. Yeah, all the SMPTE meetings are doing these Zoom meetings like this, and I think it's a wonderful contribution.
Yeah, it's nice. This is funny. I'm actually giving this very same presentation next Tuesday back home in Pittsburgh to my SMPTE fellow friends there and whoever else tunes in.
So this is a rehearsal.
This is a rehearsal. Well, this is a very thorough rehearsal. You guys, New England, you got a lot of people in that region. Pittsburgh, we're very small. So you guys cover a whole big footprint of the Northeast and have a lot of more questions that way. So you guys see a lot of things.
This was very stimulating, and I want to come back to the subject, whether it's 6 months or a year from now, and then as things develop. I think it would be interesting to see how some of your users are faring with it, and actually see some examples. And I'd like to see, this would have been interesting to actually see this caption.
Yeah, because in Zoom, where's that button? I don't know if this apps. No. Anyway, okay, I'm getting lost down a rabbit hole of Zoom.
You can do it next week in Pittsburgh.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like hearing my own voice. I hate seeing my own captions. I'm like, I didn't use that word, but I did. I was like, I just ramble on and don't even notice, like now.
All good, solid information. One thing,
Thanks, Marty.
Really great to have you. One thing I wanted to mention is our meeting next month on the 20th of October is going to be all about the development of SMPTE standards, something that I don't recall that we've actually covered, certainly not in the last number of years. And it's going to be what standards are all about, why do we need them, and the development story, and it'll use an actual standard, important SMPTE standard, and I'll keep it secret, so you all come back and want to know what it is, but a major SMPTE standard and how it was developed. And it will be told by one of the people involved, Dave Acker, one of our own members, who's a SMPTE fellow. And I think you might even want to pick that up in Pittsburgh, and it should be very, very interesting. Dave's a brilliant guy with many patents, and
wow,
this should be quite interesting because SMPTE standards are, I think, actually ignored by a lot of people in SMPTE. They're not, it's like another world.
Yeah, and SMPTE seems to be beefing up their, awareness of standards. I seem to see more emails coming out about that, and also even sharing and distribution lists, how different sections can have their meetings sent to the whole SMPTE distribution list.
Right.
So, yeah, and that's who knew COVID would teach us that there's a bigger audience out there than the 10 or 15 people that show up for free pizza.
Yeah. What free pizza? No.
Oh, yeah.
Well, some of these business meetings now, they have your local pizza shop on these lunch and learn things. They have them deliver the pizza to your house.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
Paul,
Yeah, I don't think we can afford to do that, but well, Bill, thank you very, very much. And let's keep in touch with each other, especially since we're all in SMPTE.
I look forward to it. And thank you, Marty, for putting this together, and everyone for your thorough questions, because really you've kept me leaning in with answers. So, sometimes the audience may not have many things to ask. You guys had a lot of good ones. So
you also
thanks.
kept me after a hard day's work. So,
Yeah. That's what it is. Still a work day. On that
So,
note, then,
Paul, I think you can, this is a wrap before we actually go to midnight.
I'm going to hang up. I will see you guys. Nice to
Right.
see you all. And
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you all for
Thanks
coming.
very much. Very nice presentation.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your
Yeah.
time.
Bye-bye.
Anybody-
Marty, stay on the line so we can check your mic.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm
Yes,
using
just
the
stay
phone.
on. You and I will stay online.
Yeah. 'cause
Thank
I'm
you, Bill.
using the
Thank you,
phone.
guys.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody. Marty, if you want to sign on with your other computer while we're here,
Yeah, I can do that.
and we can just play around with it. We're no longer, there's a few people still on. Robin's on, Brooke, and Peter Z. Hi, Peter Z.
Okay, let's see if I can do this. I think
So
it's
Paul, you're going to connect me up with him, right?
Yes, I will get you his email. And are you receiving my emails?
I don't think I got the emails you sent, but I think it's because I just missed them.
Recording in progress.
All right, I will send you some emails. Let me
Whoops,
stop
sorry
this.
about that.